was that? Never mind that. What was that?
Hi!
Who are you?
Barf!
Not in here, mister. This is a Mercedes.
Nah, that's my name. Barf!
Barf? What are you?
And here we go. BARFF, Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Brian the Commish. Joining me, as always, in the studio tonight, co-host of the show, Walt Mikulski. Walt, it's great to have you here tonight.
Great being here, Brad. Thanks.
All right, and joining us in the studio tonight, the owner of No Lineup Needed, Christian's here. Christian, it's great to have you in studio.
Thank you, Commish, and good evening, guys.
All right, joining us on the phones to add some insight this evening, Tyler's on the phone, owner of Worst Team Ever. Tyler, how are you tonight?
Doing good, Commish. How are you guys doing?
We're doing good.
Really
We're doing
well.
good. We're talking about week 2 already. Last week's show had to do with the draft in week 1. And now we're already on to week 2. Walt, what game do you want to start with to start off this conversation?
Well, I think it would make sense to start with my own. And you've heard that expression, a picture is worth 1,000 words.
I have heard that.
So I'm going to give a little visual on how I'm feeling about my team right now. I don't want to say this is a celebratory drink, but I'm feeling really good where I'm at right now. And I'm going to have a little toast to myself.
I feel as though you are enjoying the winning that you're doing.
I sure am, and I'm even enjoying the amount of my victories. The margin of victory is pretty damn nice too, I must say.
You sure had a decent margin of victory as Born to Run takes out the Soaring Eagles, 142-96 in another tough scoring performance for the Soaring Eagles. Walt, what led you to victory this week?
Well, I won even in spite of myself for some reason, outthinking and benching Scary Terry. And I really thought that was going to come back to haunt me. But overall, just another all-around strong performance. There really were no holds except for Sanders, my kicker, which was nice getting a big fat 0 there. But, unfortunately for Soaring Eagles, they had a kind of a lackluster performance from those running backs, and I think ultimately Josh Allen, with an average day, could overcome that disappointing 12 points combined for the running backs. Maybe it's the curse of Miles Sanders.
Miles Sanders may still hold some curse value.
There might be something to it.
Was your decision to not start McLaurin a Taylor Heineke decision, or was something else factored into that?
Well, according to the owner, Sody Pantlos, he said he got in my head from the podcast. But, it was just a solid week from top to bottom, except for my kicker, Jason Sanders. And then flip it on the other side, unfortunately for Jordan, he had really a lackluster performance from his RB position with only 12 points combined, and Josh Allen couldn't kind of compensate for that. He just had a regular average fantasy day, not a Josh Allen kind of day. So that kind of ultimately doomed poor Soaring Eagles.
Christian, you look at this score, Born to Run runs up another high score. Players like Mike Williams and Deontay Johnson, clearly Mahomes were expecting to go over. How scary is this team moving forward?
I'd say probably out of 10, definitely a 10, the scariest. I mean, if you just look at the main names of McCaffrey, Mahomes, and then just whoever is really slotted in the wide receiver position. I mean, obviously, to my own dismay, Ayuk really hasn't actually played in a game so far. He's sort of just put on a jersey. So Deebo Samuel, obviously, beneficiary of that. And, the Chargers' offense is looking pretty dynamic. Mike Williams is getting more balls than he ever has, and a lot shorter. He used to be the long ball guy.
Right.
So now he's seeming like a actual wide receiver, too, rather than just like Keenan Allen's little brother. So, I think this game is just super evident of, I guess, almost like the opposite of last year, where so many people were focused on running backs last year that sort of wide receivers went back or went later, and now everyone focused on wide receivers early. So there's a bunch of teams that have these I'd say pretty shoddy running back groups, even not even a running back one, which I think is what the Soaring Eagles suffered from this week.
Right. Another strong performance for you, Walt. That's very impressive.
Yeah, thanks. And I guess the thing with Mike Williams for me Debo I'm not sold on is going to be consistent the whole year round. But I don't know, what you think, Commish. But Mike Williams, to me, he's just a big body. He's definitely that. I guess Herbert looks for him, unlike when Phillip Rivers was there. Rivers would throw the long ball, but I see Herbert really using him as a critical piece of that passing offense. And like I said, size-wise, he's a tough matchup.
Yeah, he's one of those prototypical monsters,
Yeah.
You got the DK Metcalfs and Amari Cooper, and Mike Williams is definitely in that mold.
Yep. But yeah, I'm feeling good all the way around. And Christian, normally I would argue with other owners, but I can't argue with your assessment.
Thank you.
Christian, what game do you want to look at next?
Oh, we can look at mine. Get the pain out of the way early.
I love it.
I mean, the first 2 weeks, Walt's been pouring nice beers for himself, but I've been pouring them just to get through the week, Looking at some of the scores my teams have been putting up recently, I don't really know what else really to put in there. Get beat by 20 points, get beat by 50 points week 1. Not a great sign, but I'm pretty confident still in my team.
Yeah, it's just been a little bit of a power outage. I certainly thought that you were going to be doing better quarterback-wise. Tannehill kind of let you down in week 1. You subbed in Baker Mayfield this week. He puts up 19. 19 is respectable, but that's not what you expect from a QB.
Oh, not at all, especially going up against Houston. And Houston is a team without really – they sort of just dealt all their pieces or had external problems. So I expected them to go down like a sack of potatoes, and obviously they didn't. Somehow they put up 21 points in a game that should have been like the 35-0 game of the week.
Right. Well, what were your thoughts on this game? It's been tough for no lineup needed to score points. What do you see as the cause of that?
Well, I think it's just a matter of you haven't found the lineup that you really want to stick with. You're kind of hoping, plug in, maybe this is the guy, whatever. And I think that's probably part of it. Like Corey Davis last week, big week. This week you stick with him. He disappoints, so that hurts. Somebody encouraging, though, Kyle Pitts with 12 points. That was really good.
Yeah.
And, I'll say this. Really tough to expect that Cooper Kupp was going to unload 38 points. And I definitely did not see that one coming at all. So that was a little kind of bad luck there.
And with like Cooper Kupp putting up 38, if you take that and you like reduce that to, I don't know, like even 20, you have outside of that, Connor's team didn't actually do that well. That's sort of like what really put them in like the 120, 130 range. If you look at the rest of them, sort of lackluster from the running backs outside of Zeke, or like Zeke did okay, but I don't really see that as a sticking point. But, Dave Montgomery, okay. Jonathan Taylor, definitely expect him to do better. But outside of that, I can't really be mad. I guess I got sort of like Gus Edwards gets injured. I thought that was a pretty decent pickup at the draft.
Yep.
And then it sort of just gets washed down the drain because the Ravens run their players in the ground. And then Ayuk is sort of like, honestly, if Kyle Shanahan is here, I'll put on a jersey and get one reception if he wants to. He can pay me like $35 to play too. So
yeah, that's a 0.5 points per game average for Brandon Ayuk so far this season. That's hard for a team to overcome.
Yeah, especially there was a lot of hype around him too. Even what I read, it was all about Ayuk.
And what's weird though is that like coming into the season, there was nothing written about him, no injuries. Like they knew they had a nagging one, but that was him and Deebo Samuel both had injury problems. But then it just came out after the first game that apparently he had work ethic issues. He wasn't practicing, yet no one really talked about that. There was no reports on it. So that's sort of odd. I don't like to see that, especially when the coach is like he sort of dodges questions around it, like, oh, it's his injury, this guy deserves more time sort of thing. So I'm definitely not confident in that. But, Corey Davis, I didn't really – the Pats D, I guess, is better than I thought they were going to be.
Yeah, me too.
But Corey Davis, I think, is still a really talented, I think he's probably the only target on that team that, unless he's thrown to the other team, that Zach Wilson will hopefully target.
Yeah, he trusts him for right now. Tyler, we talked about Born to Run, and now we've got Huey Lewis in the news. They're both 2-0. Give me your thoughts on these two teams. It's an early part of the season. Which one of those two teams right now do you fear more as they sit at the top of the standings?
Yeah, I would say probably Born to Run. Based on their point totals, these first couple weeks here, and that firepower that he really has. Mentioned it in the first episode of the podcast here, really having the number one player, at the QB and running back position. He could say he's lucky to be 2-0 because, he didn't take the advice of the commissioner who always says, don't get cute and bench your best players. So that Terry McLaurin bench, I guess he's kind of lucky that didn't come back and hunt them, but I would still say he's probably the team to beat at this point.
Yeah, that's, McLaurin, you have that question mark with Heineke, but boy, they sure love that Taylor Heineke in Washington.
Yeah, I know.
The team seems to rally behind him.
I might be a believer, honestly, because I remember the playoff game last year against Tampa, and the team responded to him. Yeah. They almost pulled that upset.
Right.
So I agree with you.
It's hard to carry that momentum for so long, but that kid sure has. He carried it from last year's playoffs right into week 2 this year, so good for him. Tyler, let's talk about your game. You take on Hung Like a Horse, and you put up the second high score of the week with a 161-114 victory. Tell us about your game.
Yeah. Around the 2 o'clock mark, I was getting a little bit nervous. Calvin Ridley hadn't really done much up to that point. But he did get that touchdown late, what really helped boost up his totals there. And then I feel like I had a little bit of a pep talk with Derrick Henry virtually here. I was complaining to multiple league members on what the hell is this guy doing to me. But then towards the end of the game, I don't know if my message got through to the Tennessee locker room, but he really picked it up and carried me to victory there.
Yeah, that's a monster performance. When you get 49 points from a player, you better win. Well, what do you think? On the other side of the ball, Hung Like a Horse, they put up 140-plus points last week, and this week they dropped to 114, a real power outage from one week to the next. What do you think is responsible for that?
I think it's you're looking at, he's part of the equation, your boy Kenyon Drake, so talk about another curse.
Oh, boy.
But there's I don't know how many people watched the Tennessee game. A.J. Brown, Tommy must have been going crazy because he dropped a bunch of passes. He just had a really, really off game. So it's easy to blame the backs, but A.J. Brown definitely did not have a good game at all.
When you get targets for your player, you're so happy, but when you get 9, 10 targets, 3 catches, that's the kind of thing that drives you crazy.
Exactly.
Absolutely crazy.
Yep. And then Hoxton, Tommy's got to be feeling really good about that pick. Jared Goff looks really locked into him, so I think going forward, Tommy's going to be in pretty good shape, other than the curse of Kenyon Drake.
Keeps him in that starting lineup too.
I know.
Tempting fate.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And for Tyler, I'll say this. One thing good for you is that Tennessee, no matter what the score is, they stay committed to the run. And in today's NFL, you just don't see that often. So I'm sure Christian's probably, I think he's got a little tear in his eye right now that he wishes Derrick Henry was back home. But
yeah, especially after I got mocked for picking him like 4th overall last year.
Yeah, that pick certainly worked out last year, and after a slow start, he catches right up. So that leads Tyler to victory this week, 161-114. Both of these teams sitting at 1-1 after week 2. Let's talk about. Where are we? My game.
Your game?
Yeah. Well, yeah. It was 149-127. I took out Sody Pantloads. I was happy to get that victory over the Soats. It's a tough team to see on the schedule, and my team responded. I finally got a little more production out of the running backs. Not stunning, but enough to get by. Still some concerns on my team. And Walt, tell me what you think about DK Metcalf. All the things that I was being warned about, and I took him really high. He's a 2nd-round pick, and 11 points. Lockett is blowing up, and it's driving me crazy. And that was the warning. The warning was DK's out there running around, and Lockett's eating up all the targets.
Yeah, that's shocking, honestly, though. Really is. I don't know what league I was on. Oh, no, this league. I made the trade for Lockett, and other than 3 games, he was a big disappointment. I don't know, maybe there was rumors he was dinged up a little last year. Maybe that's true. But I'm still baffled by the lack of even targets for DK and not being super duper involved in the offense. So I'm very surprised, honestly.
Yeah, it surprises me. And the other one, Chase Claypool. I really put a lot of faith in Chase Claypool. You had the same kind of faith in Deontay Johnson, and it's paying off for it's not working out pretty at all for me. Christian, Sody Pantloads riding that running back duo of Najee Harris and DeAndre Swift. Is that duo going to be enough when you put them with Kamara? Kamara got 6 points. He's going to have an off week every now and then. What are you going to do? Drew Brees is gone. He's still an amazing talent. But Najee Harris and DeAndre Swift, two players that were highly touted coming in. Do those picks pay off for him?
I like Najee Harris a lot. I think he's like the perfect Pittsburgh running back, considering they just like to pass the ball. And he's a target that can catch. And I mean, DeAndre, it's one of those tough teams to really judge because you look at Hawkinson, great, like seems like he has a great connection, but then a committee back is just always tough because one game he could look stunning and the next game he could get 10 snaps. Right. So it's just sort of like an iffy one, but I think he got him pretty late, so that might be a good late pick.
Yeah. Yeah, he's certainly getting production. This week, when 127 seems like an off week for your team, then you got a good team.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like you said, Kamara getting 6 points ain't going to happen too often. One interesting thing that I saw is he's got Brandon Cooks there, and there was a guy I was kind of down on because of no Deshaun Watson, but this is like 2 solid weeks in a row for Brandon Cooks.
Brandon Cooks can get no respect in fantasy football.
Yeah,
he gets picked in some leagues. He sits on the bench, and he's had 2 great weeks, but still does not crack that Sody Pantloads lineup. That's hard.
But didn't Tyrod Taylor? He's on the IR now, I think.
Tyrod is out now. So who is playing down there?
There's some guy with named Doug Smith or something like that was brought on. I don't even know name I've never seen.
Yeah, so that could
Cam
pretty
Newton,
much that could be rough. Then
Yep, that could lead to trouble. I will point out for everyone that Sony Michel was on the bench, but he did score 4 points, which is 4 points more than he scored last week, and so we're seeing improvement from the Sony Michel pick. That's a secret weapon that I have. I'm just going to keep that in my back pocket for now.
Are you going to start him knowing Darrell Henderson might be out for the game?
So that's I read that also, and the workload will be so high, especially with Elijah Mitchell now banged up.
Yeah,
you might see some Sony time.
Sony time.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, let's take a look at the Springfield Rifle, and we'll talk now about the week's high score. Boston Beans blowing up for 182 points and beating the Tough Luck Springfield Rifle 182 to 124. Walt, this is the second week that the Springfield Rifle goes up over 120 points and comes away with a loss, and once again they face the highest scoring team in BARFF, which is rough. Tell me about this game.
Well, the biggest surprise was the lack of anything out of Tyreek Hill, especially after the week 1 where he just went off. So 5 points, there's no way anybody could have thought that was going to happen. I figured he's at least good for 15 to 20. So that was surprising. Of course, who thinks Teddy Bridgewater is going to look like a real NFL quarterback and actually keep putting up really good fantasy numbers?
Teddy Bridgewater took some heat on the podcast last week, and he showed us wrong.
Yeah.
Putting up 25 points this week.
But I think that the running back situation is really, I think, going to be difficult for the Rifle to manage. Barkley, I don't know what's going on with Barkley. Tough matchup, looked a little better, but there was really that, one really good run, and then other than that was not a lot. Robinson, for whatever reason, doesn't seem to factor in as much as last year. So that seems to be an Achilles heel right now for the Rifle, which is, on paper, it looks like he should be all set, but it's just not panning out.
Right. Christian, Rifle kept Aaron Rodgers on the bench, which after last week, no one can blame them, but he seemed to have a little bit of a resurgent performance. Do you start Aaron Rodgers in week 3?
I'd say yes. I mean, it's hard to really, one game off. I mean, I would not put him on my bench when you have weapons like Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones.
Right. And
you have such a good connection. One game, bad game. He actually looked like he wanted to retire that game, but apparently he doesn't. So I'd start him. Well, I also only have Ryan Tannehill. So
yeah.
Yeah, well, that's true. He looks like he's dyeing his hair, though, Rodgers. So I still don't know if he really wants to be playing football.
Maybe just teasing the fans a little bit.
I'm telling you, he looks like he's really concerned about his appearance and how he looks now. So I don't know. It's really weird.
He's a movie star.
Yeah, exactly.
Boston Beans gets a huge 40 points from Aaron Rodgers' teammate Aaron Jones, scoring all the touchdowns for that team. When you go 40 and 16 out of your running backs, again, you better win that game, and they certainly did. 18 out of the Buccaneers D, but that didn't even outscore the Bills D. You know, this had potential to be a shootout. It's just you can't overcome a 40-point game like that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Tyler, let's talk about this because we brought up Aaron Rodgers dyeing his hair, so I can't let topics like this go. I'm not going to talk about the high score. I'm not going to talk about the great performances with the running backs. Have you, Tyler, ever one time seen a player carted off of an NFL field for a rib injury?
No, that was interesting. And I texted the Beans after that as well, wondering what was going through his head at that point in time. Seemed a little bit lost.
Yeah, I gave a lot of heat to Kenyon Drake, who did a little bit of crying last year, and that entertained me a little bit. But a rib injury and they get the cart. I was looking at his legs; they seemed like they worked. I don't know. What do you guys think? To me, that's a little embarrassing.
So I remember last year. Oh, Tyler, go ahead, please.
No, that's fine. I was just going to, quote the fine owner, of the Boston Beans when I did inquire about what he thought about that, Tua injury. And he said, quote, that D lineman should be kicked out of the league for life for that hit. He said it was late and dirty. So I'll leave you with that.
That's a fan. That's a true fan.
I love the blind loyalty to that.
The homerism.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got to be really happy, though. Jacoby Brissett put on a show coming out of that position, really made the Buffalo D look good. So, I mean, I would never think a person scoring 180 points would shed a tear during a week of barf. But
yeah, my thing, too, is last year, Tyrod Taylor let a guy stick a needle to get by the rib pain, and it punctured his lung. And then Tua's going home and going nursing his sore ribs.
Yeah, that was quite a display. We'll have to get some footage of that.
I think he's ruled out this week already.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that there are broken ribs, and so you're not going to play on that, especially as a young quarterback. But yeah, I still
didn't Drew Brees play with broken ribs last
Drew
year?
Brees did play with broken ribs. Yeah. Yep. But he also, I haven't seen him on a cart for just about anything. So
very good point.
Yeah, the cart.
Different generations of quarterbacks.
Yeah, I have to agree. All right, so that is the end of the week 2 recap, and here's the whistle. And the whistle means, Christian, it's time for 3 and Out with Walt.
You're so mad.
Oh, throw the flag! He's all over him!
All right, Christian. We're going to start off, as usual, easy on you. So, but it's a really important question because you're 0-2. You got the lowest points in the league. So you're, I think, at 195, not even 200. Everyone else is over 200. So the question begs is, what are you going to do to turn this around?
I mean, I'm not going to say I don't like my team. I think my team's pretty good. Like, consistency obviously seems like an issue. And that's what happens when, I mean, I will say I have a lot of players on pretty bad teams in terms of like just how they looked. I mean, I hope to turn around because I think I trust my players a little bit. I think they're good. We saw Joe Mixon look better than he has his entire career in the NFL last week. But, I guess consistency is the biggest thing.
Yeah. So do you see trades or just waiver wire acquisitions as a way to shore up some of these holes?
Yeah, I mean, I think I have some decent players to move, at least one. I think Tyson Williams, or however you pronounce it, I have not looked it up, but I've acquired some interest from some people. I think he's actually a pretty decent running back. I haven't played him because I think the players I have are a little better, but I think that's a player I could move. But also, I think there's a lot of players on the waiver wire that are looking good. Mm-hmm. I mean, Arizona's entire offense is like a well-oiled machine. There's definitely like Cordell Patterson has been in the league for how many years, and the dude looks like he's a rookie.
Right.
So I think there's a lot of options out there.
I agree with that. So every owner, when they're have a rough start like this, you start looking at your roster and you evaluate. Looking at it, who do you see right now when you went in with high hopes is really your biggest disappointment on your roster right now?
It has to be Ayuk.
Ayuk, yeah.
That I think that San Francisco team is super talented if they can stay healthy. We've seen a repeat of last year with their healthiness, running back troubles, wide receiver troubles. But I think the biggest part for Ayuk is he's not injured. He's obviously fine. He has he may be questionable or may sit out of practice, but that's pretty normal. But when you're a fully healthy player and you get looked at like 3 times a game in 2 games, and you're supposed to be like a number 1 or number 2, there's definitely something going on. And yet they say nothing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I agree. That's basically that's really disappointing, especially where you kind of picked them.
Yeah.
So going the other way, is there someone that you said, yeah, kind of like high hopes for, but they're still exceeding what you really thought?
I mean, I think Kyle Pitts he had a rough week 1, but. You can watch college all you want. College is a different ballgame, but the dude's super talented. He's almost he's like the scouts say, he's like, I've never seen a tight end who just looks like a wide receiver. He runs like a wide receiver. Maybe Darren Waller might be like a decent example, but I think last week showed he's good. He has a good connection. He had 70 yards. I mean, he didn't find the red zone, but that was a tough game. At least for passing wise for Matty Ice, I'm super high on him. I think he'll be top 5, top 6 tight end going forward.
Yeah, I see it that way too. As the season progresses, I think rookies always have growing pains early on, but I think he's going to be pretty solid. All right, so this week it's already kind of one of those pivotal games. 0-2, as we said for you. You got the rifle coming up, jumping the gun a little, but 0-2. Do you see this as a must-win game this early on in the season?
I'm gonna say no. I didn't care for the longest time. I'm really immune to morale defeat by losses. I could lose every game of the season and have the same attitude every week, which I think is a good thing. I think my team's good enough that if they get their consistency down, because a lot of the players aren't necessarily inconsistent, the teams have been inconsistent. If you look at the records of the teams that should be the top of the NFL or the good teams, especially in the AFC, they're essentially 1-1. The Bills, the Chiefs, the Steelers. Tennessee almost went 0-2, except if Derrick Henry didn't put on my back. So I think it's more team inconsistency than necessarily player inconsistency. I'm still pretty high on all my players. I got plenty of games to figure it out. If I don't make it, I'm not going to hate myself, but I could lose this week and I'd be okay.
I would say if it was last year, I'd be more concerned, but I do think because of the extra game we get this year, I think you can overcome an 0-3 start, but it's definitely, it puts you in a little bit of a hole, no doubt.
Oh, yeah, and I mean, I don't think I had the best draft personally. I mean, I took Eckler 8th. I think that was because I felt the need to have a running back, and the rest didn't really cut it for the quality I really wanted. Saquon, I'm a Giants fan, but I'm not gonna sort of an iffy one, especially early in the. It wouldn't have mattered. I lost 2 weeks in a row, but he's been iffy. So I'm still pretty. I think my team looks good. If Ayuk was there, I think the 5 that I have, 2 running backs and 3 wide receivers or whatever flex, I think I'd be one of the better teams.
Okay. So I have a 3A question.
Oh, boy.
Okay, listen carefully now. You're in a raft. You're in the middle of the ocean, okay? And you're in there with 3 of your ex-hockey teammates. This is the old Sophie's Choice type of question.
Okay.
You got JJ, you got Tony, you got Kyle. Now you got to get rid of weight. The raft's deflating, right? So, and you can only keep one of them. So I want to know who's getting tossed and why, and who's the one you're keeping.
Oh, honestly, I think this is I find this in my head a little too easy than I hoped.
Wow.
So
excellent.
I would, I think, Jordan, I'm really sorry. You got to go. I gotta I'm bigger and heavier, so I have to have someone lighter than myself.
Okay. Oh wow. Okay.
So
You got two
or
good candidates left. Gotcha.
yeah. So I have to go with the scrawnier guys, and then I think Ant goes too. I mean, I don't know. I think I'd get really annoyed by all the stuff he'd say about the Dolphins. I'd go feed him to some. He can go live out his final moments seeing some dolphins underwater, which is essentially where his team is at this point. So, yeah, and I keep Kyle. I think he'd probably be a pretty decent navigator. Also, he's actually, I think he is. He drives that Stanley Black and Decker truck around all the time. Dude knows the roads. I'm pretty sure he could figure out the ocean.
All right, that's pretty good rationale. I think the Tony question comes down how long you out at sea, right?
Exactly.
So if it's a week, I kind of got.
It might be like a Wilson moment almost for me. If I leave him on there too long, I might just need to talk to an inanimate object for the rest of my life. So.
All right, well, Christian, that was great. You nailed that question. So well done, sir.
Oh, thank you.
There have been some great moments in 3 and Out that if that's not my favorite question to date, I don't know what is. That was amazing. Well done.
Thank you.
Let's look at next week, NFL Week 3. We've got Born to Run taking on Boston Beans, and so far, what else do you expect? Born to Run is projected to go off. Walt, does this concern you at all?
Yeah, it does actually. For one time, I'll show a little, humility when it comes to matchups. Yeah, the Beans. If you look at points wise, he's putting up a lot of points, Tony.
Yeah.
He's got the good running back. So, Russell Wilson against Minnesota coming up. Not loving that matchup for me. I do kind of like Aaron Jones against Frisco. That makes me kind of happy. Keenan Allen always terrorizes KC, so I don't want that one. Yeah. I don't like Mike Evans. Andrews against Detroit. So I look at matchups. I kind of like, the Beans. They got pretty decent matchup. But I'm confident. I still think when it's the consistency of my team, I think is what's going to make me tough to beat, week in, week out.
Yeah. Yeah, Christian, what do you think about this matchup? You've got this has the makings. I won't even call it a trap game because the Beans are playing strong. Are they going to knock Born to Run off of this pedestal this week?
That's tight. I don't even know if I could call that. But there's one part of the Beans lineup I don't like. Mike Evans, I actually don't like his matchup versus the Rams. The Rams have given up a decent amount of points, at least in the last game, even though their defense is considered one of the better ones. But a number one receiver, Jalen Ramsey, doesn't play a position. He plays the number one receiver or the best player on that day. And I'd be afraid, especially when you have the weapons outside of Mike Evans. So if Mike Evans is covered the entire game with Jalen Ramsey, if Antonio Brown gets off the COVID list, I'm sure Antonio Brown or Chris Godwin or Gronk will have these huge games if the defense isn't great and Jalen Ramsey is on Evans all game.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. If they decide to have Ramsey shadow Evans, I definitely then feel really good about that. But it's like you said, I think they do it on who's having the better day. So I don't. It's not a lock for sure.
Right. Tyler, let's look at your game. It's a Civil War game coming up this week against Sody Pantloads. Both teams pulling in at 1-1. Right now, the projections have the game going to Sody Pantloads, but again, as we say, it's Wednesday. What do you think with your lineup? Sody Pantloads lost this past week. Do you think you're going to take them out this week?
Yeah, it should be an interesting one, especially what happens with Mari Cooper, nursing his injury, if he's going to be fully up to health. Because, when you look at ESPN's projection, they have Cooper edging out Chris Godwin. Sure, maybe with the healthy Mari Cooper, I might agree with that. But if he's nursing that injury, I would certainly give the advantage to Godwin, especially as you guys had said, if Ramsey's shadowing, Mike Evans. I would say my biggest issue going into this week's figuring out what I'm doing with that RB2 position. Who knows what they have Clyde Edwards-Helaire projected at, probably like 3 points. So we could be getting crazy this week and subbing someone in for him. But I guess we'll have to wait and see.
All right. Walt, what do you think about that? Clyde Edwards-Helaire, is that a player that's going to have the productive season that was anticipated, or is he going to continue to struggle?
I think Tyler's the only one that had faith in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So I'm just not buying it. There's just way too many options with that team. Andy Reid's never been one to commit to a run. He's always had the Brian Westbrook type of back that, is more of a pass-catching threat than actually a legit rushing. So, yeah, I just don't see it. I think it might be time for Ty to roll the dice and, put someone else instead of Hilaire and wait till he proves it out that he's going to be a factor.
All right.
And I would just like to correct your co-host there. I did not have faith in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And in the draft, I said, quote, "Why am I doing this? I am going to regret this." So.
It's called buyer's remorse, my friend.
Yeah, that happens. Christian, this matchup has Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts. It would be interesting to see if Kyle goes away from Lamar Jackson this week with Jalen Hurts looking better. But right now, let's assume that he's going to have Lamar Jackson in there against Dak Prescott. Which quarterback has the better week this week?
I think not Dak. Sorry, Lamar Jackson on the maybe total team wise. Dak will, because Dak has really an unlimited amount of weapons. In Dallas, it's really Dallas's problem is really their defense is sort of taped together with Scotch tape. Mm-hmm. But Jackson on a point basis, they essentially don't need a running back. Tyson Williams has been there, and he's been actually pretty good, I think, for a rookie. But Detroit showed that, Aaron Jones literally got a bunch of dump-offs from Aaron Rodgers and scored 4 TDs. I think that they have a pretty holy defense, and I think Lamar Jackson's like the perfect player to exploit it.
All right. Yeah, can't argue with that. Let's look at the Rifle taking on no lineup needed. Christian, is there 2 0-2 teams? We talked about a little while ago about the potential disaster of an 0-3 start, and I'll agree with you, Christian, in that 0-3 right now, it's not a terrible spot to be in. One of these teams is going to be 0-3. The other team is going to be 1-2, and a bunch of other 1-1 teams. There's going to be kind of that typical barf log jam right in the middle. So an 0-3 jumps right back into that with a win. But you've got the Rifle. The Rifle have gone over 120 both weeks. They've had strong performances, but they are the knuckleheads from last year. They continually play against the top score in the league. So that's looking up for you. How do you see your matchup going this week?
As I said before, I've liked my team. I think I've had some problems like that flex position of I've had 0 and 2 points. But, if you look at my team, it looks pretty good. I just need the consistency. It's like almost the opposite of Walt's team, in that Walt has these players that are almost automatically consistent when I've had teams that are not consistent but still good players. So, I like Allen Robinson versus Cleveland. Cleveland let up 21 points versus Houston. He's been okay. Joe Mixon, not the greatest matchup. Austin Eckler, that Kansas City defense seems to be is not great, to say it lightly. But, I like my running backs versus his. His running backs I don't think are even come near the quality of mine, and I think that will probably be the deciding factor if I win.
All right. Well, if you are the Springfield Rifle, who are you starting at quarterback this week? This is Aaron Rodgers versus Teddy Bridgewater. We picked on Teddy Bridgewater last week, but he was available. He got picked up, plugged in, and put up 25 points.
Yeah. I'm riding the hot hand. I'm still not convinced of Rodgers' commitment. Bridgewater's got the Jets. It's a great matchup. He's hot. I say keep riding him. I'd stick with Bridgewater.
All right. Let's take a look at Hung Like a Horse taking on Soaring Eagles. These are 2 1-1 teams. Hung Like a Horse is putting up a little bit more point totals. This week, the projections go to the Soaring Eagles so far, 129 to 126. Walt, tell me how you see this game going this week.
Yeah, I don't know if I quite see it other than because of all the questionable marks on Hung Like a Horse, if that has a lot to do with it. Dalvin Cook came out of the game 2 times. He went back in both times. Unlike Tua, he's able to play through some pain, obviously. But Josh Allen against Washington, really tough. Miles Sanders against Dallas, I don't think that's a great matchup. Devontae Adams against San Francisco. D-Hop's a little banged up. So I think Soaring Eagles does have some tough matchups, some question marks. But I think it'll really come down to is Dalvin Cook 100%. Antonio Gibson, A.J. Brown, all those Qs are really banged up. It could be tough sledding for Hung Like a Horse then.
Yeah. Christian, You're a Giants fan. Soaring Eagles has Sterling Shepard. Sterling Shepard, I believe, is leading the league in receptions through 2 weeks. Is this a player that this team can roll with? They've got Devontae Adams and D-Hop. Sterling Shepard is kind of that afterthought. Is he one of those sneaky keys to success for Soaring Eagles right now?
Yeah, and I'd say actually his wide receivers on the bench actually look pretty good. Like T. Higgins has looked like an absolute steal, considering that Joe Burrow, though under pressure, seems to only really find him, especially in that second game. But I like Sterling Shepard against Atlanta. Atlanta obviously is not the best team, neither the Giants, but they let up a lot of points, especially against that Tampa Bay defense or that Tampa Bay wide receiver offense. But my thing with the Soaring Eagles, just like I said about the rifle, is those running backs are the running back lineup in total is not great, and that could be like one of those things that may not bite him in this game. They could have a great game, but that could be one of those lagging issues.
Yeah, I can't criticize anyone for running back selection because I held off on running backs myself. But it could be a problem. Miles Sanders, we've talked about him ad nauseum. When he's in and ready to go, he's terrific. But boy, he's constantly banged up. And Walt, I'll agree. I am concerned with Dalvin Cook, and he is an example of what I was talking about last week when I was questioning putting too much value on running backs because of that extra game to you and me isn't a thing.
Yep.
But to someone like Dalvin Cook, they're smart in Minnesota. They'll feed him. But how long can he last?
Yeah, well, you're seeing that in Dallas. I'm seeing, being a Cowboy fan, a split between Pollard and Zeke. Right. And it's definitely because of that extra game. They want to minimize the wear on it. And so, question for a fellow, you guys Giant fans, Kenny Golladay was on the sideline complaining to Jason Garrett. Do you think that will have an impact on Sterling Shepard this week?
I don't. I'll jump in and just say I think that they're going to roll the way that they roll. Kenny Golladay has not made the best of the opportunities he's had. So he's frustrated with Jason Garrett. I think I'm frustrated with Kenny Golladay. I'm frustrated with myself, and it's coming out that way. Christian, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Golladay, I don't really know what he expects from Garrett, considering he's essentially an unknown entity, considering how he played or lack of played last year, and sort of got a contract off of, he looked good when he could play, but he just didn't play often. And, I mean, that might also be a problem with, the Giants' offense. The Giants have looked good, I think. Their defense is good, I think pretty good. Last week didn't really display that, but I think Galladay's making more of a fuss than he should, considering that there's him and Saquon essentially are coming into a new offense that they didn't play in last year.
Yeah, and that has a lot to do with it. You can be involved in meetings and such, but if you're not on the field practicing and going through it,
that's a really good point.
That's hard. Tyler, Josh Allen is in the starting lineup for Soaring Eagles, as well he should be. He was the second quarterback taken in the draft after Patrick Mahomes, but the first 2 weeks he's 17 and 19. Are you concerned with Josh Allen? They've got Washington this week.
Not really. It could take another week, against that Washington D for him to pick it up. But yeah, no, I'm not to the point where I'm even thinking about benching him at this point. He's one of those guys that you gotta ride through, and I fully expect him to pick it up here in the next couple weeks.
All right. Let's move to the Knuckleheads taking on Huey Lewis in the News. Huey Lewis in the News comes in at 2-0. Knuckleheads come in at 1-1. Right now, the projected totals have the Knuckleheads going 137 over Huey Lewis 123. Walt, tell me about this projection. I'm hoping that it's accurate. I'm getting good games from the players I need to. CD Lamb, I'm loving his matchup this week, and I also with Amari Cooper a little bit hobbled. I love Kelsey's matchup, and I love Kyler Murray's matchup. Do I come out on top?
I think you do. I think you're salivating with those matchups.
I am. I like
it. It really is. I mean, you couldn't pick a better week to be playing a 2-0 team as you are this week. I think it's really if that second running back who you plug in there, maybe because more than likely you won't be able to stick with Mitchell. I think it sounded like he wasn't going to be a go for that. So, yeah, I think you're in really, really good shape personally for picking up your second win.
So Christian, I brought up players that I have that have decent matchups, but on the other side of the ball, Connor's team has Justin Herbert. That's probably going to be a shootout of a game, Chargers and KC, so that bodes well for him. You've got Jonathan Taylor with a favorable matchup. Cooper Kupp, that also another shootout, and boy, they love throwing a Cooper Kupp, those Rams. Do you see the matchups on the other side of the ball as turning the tide in this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is like the game of matchups. I guess Indy, Tennessee might be the only one that I'm sort of like both have showed weakness, so I don't know if either of them are really good, at least defensively. But I think this is going to be a game of just shootout games of these offensive-heavy teams that just win. But I think Zeke is probably why I don't like. I mean, I've sort of been a Zeke hater personally. I personally think that he had a great start and then just sort of trailed off. And I think last year you don't want a single or a running back fumbling the ball when he's in open field. And little side note, I talked about that trade earlier that I was offered an hour after the draft. Connor tried to pawn Zeke off to me for Eckler and Gus Edwards. Literally an hour. Like, I didn't get home by the time it was offered to me. So I don't know if that shows that he likes him or that he thought he could con me out of 2 starting running backs.
No, if Connor's trading you, that doesn't. It means he dislikes Zeke immensely. And
so I don't know where that stands, but I sort of I told him I'd take a couple days to look at it, and then I just sort of forgot about the trade because that's how much I didn't like it. So that's sort of like where I stand, and I mean Justin Taylor's looked okay. That's like I think my biggest thing this season is running backs. I think matter more than people like to let on.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. Tyler, you're a Dallas fan. Zeke, can a running back, and I'm going to take Derrick Henry out of the equation because Tennessee has built their offense around him, and that is a real anomaly right now. Is the Zeke from 5 years ago ever going to be seen again? Is the NFL geared towards feeding a running back 26, 27 times a game anymore?
No, I really don't think so. And I think Jerry Jones's comments today kind of, prove that in saying he likes the spot they're in with both Tony Pollard and Zeke Elliott. Especially with the addition of this game this year, I just don't see a point in wearing down one of your top guys when you have a guy who's coming in and being just effective, honestly, if not more effective. Pollard's showing that explosiveness that Zeke just isn't. So yeah, I don't think we're ever going to see that workhorse Zeke Elliott anymore. Don't get me wrong, still a great back, and wouldn't hate to have him. But said he's not that guy that he was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, let me do a bad job of hosting, and I've lost track. We've covered next week. So let's take a look at the standings. Pulling at the top position after 2 weeks, we have Born to Run, and with their point total, it's not even close, with 313 points for 2 monster weeks. Well played in the early part of the season there, Walt. That's a good spot to be in. The other undefeated team is Huey Lewis and the News. They're doing it differently. They've almost 100 fewer points after 2 weeks, and yet they're still coming up with 2 wins based on a 213 points against.
It's always nice.
I mean, he played me, so that's sort of like how that goes.
And then we've got the logjam of 1-1 teams with Boston Beans, Hung Like a Horse, Knuckleheads, Sody Pantloads, and Worst Team Ever, and the Soaring Eagles all coming in at 1-1. And then Springfield Rifle and no lineup needed at 0-2, but still, as we discussed earlier, very much in the mix. Walt, surprises thus far, 2 weeks, you look at these standings. Is there a surprise out there?
I guess the Rifle. It looks like they're continuing that trend of points against. 353 points against.
That's crazy.
That is outrageous. That's
crazy. After 2 weeks, that's insane.
After 2 weeks. So, if I recall, that was happened to the Rifle a few times last year, along with you, of course.
Yeah.
And I was looking at yours, and sure enough, you're at 286, not too shabby either.
Right.
So I would say the Rifle. I'm a little surprised they're 0-2. Tough matchup still coming out of the gate as well. And I think the guy that surprised me, a little love to Tony. When I was looking, I don't think I looked hard enough at his starting lineup. And I think just purely Now injuries, if they happen, then maybe the Beans might be in a little bit of trouble. But his starting lineup, the Beans, I got to give him credit. That's a really good team.
Yeah.
Other than the Tua pick, but he can defend that all day long.
Yeah, we'll have to get his insight on Tua's ribs next week. Christian, surprises at after the first 2 weeks.
I mean, I guess how much my team's disappointed me. I don't think I had the best draft by far, but I thought my team looked pretty good. Obviously, there's some unfortunate pieces, but there's been a lot of underperformance, I think. There's been a lot of sort of players or teams that should be doing well that have shown either weakness or just lack of a constructive game at this point. So I'm definitely sort of surprised at at least that not that I'm 0-2, but maybe that I've scored so little points.
Yeah, that's surprising to me too. That's my choice is no lineup.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I think Huey Lewis has to be the upward surprise. I mean, Cooper Kupp might look like the Cooper Kupp of a couple of years ago before Jared Goff sort of trailed off, because I'm always scared of teams that have these two number ones. Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp had been, but now it looks like Cooper Kupp is the number one by a country mile, and he was an absolute steal in the third round or fourth.
He'll get hurt, though.
He eats up targets, that guy.
He'll get
eats
hurt.
up targets. Tyler, looking at the standings, surprises for you after 2 weeks?
Honestly, I'm going to say no. No surprises here. And I know it was, echoed a lot in the first episode of the podcast here, but just how competitive, the league is this year. Just take a look at the standings and the points for, right? Out of all those 1-1 teams, myself, the Pantloads, and the Knuckleheads all have the same exact amount of points.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
And only 3 behind the Hunt Like a Horse at 273.
Yeah, great
so
point.
I think we're just going to continue to see this all season. It's going to be super competitive, and really can't wait to see, who comes out at the end here.
Yeah, it is.
That's a really good
270,
point.
270, 270. That's
You know what's not surprising, though? Who leads the league in acquisitions and player moves already?
It's definitely...
Yeah, I cannot say that I'm surprised.
I did not notice it was 8.
Yeah, no, I noticed it. He's just warming up. Trust me.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that Huey Lewis is 2-0. Connor has proven it. Once I started hearing people talk about the running backs, and I had my input on the running backs, and I said it again tonight with the season. I'm not putting that high value on them, but he's going to work around it. His track record is proven. He's going to have to do something pretty outrageous for me to start really getting on him. There's no doubt. All right, 2 weeks are in the books. I'd like to thank my co-host, Walt. Walt, another great show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Christian, thanks for coming by. First time in the BARFF studios.
Oh, absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. He was also subjected to the technical difficulties that it's going to take me about 6 hours to straighten out when I'm editing. Tyler, thanks for dropping by on the line. It was great to hear from you tonight.
Of course, anytime.
All right.
Thanks, Ty.
That's our show. Have a good night, everyone. Good luck to all as we head into week 3.
See you next week.